On a flight home from Moscow in early 2002, a single spreadsheet held the key to colonizing Mars. How did a man with no formal training in rocketry decide, in that moment, that he could build a rocket himself? Hi everyone, I'm your host Sarah and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring the incredible story of how Elon Musk taught himself rocket science to create SpaceX. Along the way, we'll learn some powerful and natural English together. Let's rewind a bit. By 2001, Elon Musk was already incredibly successful. He had just sold his company, PayPal, for a fortune. But he wasn't interested in buying an island. He was looking at the stars, specifically at Mars. He had an ambitious plan. By the way, ambitious means having a strong desire to be successful or powerful. For example, she has an ambitious plan to start her own business. His idea was called Mars Oasis. He wanted to send a small robotic greenhouse to the red planet. The goal was to land plants on Martian soil to inspire humanity and renew interest in space exploration. A beautiful idea, right? But there was a huge problem. Getting there? Rockets were unbelievably expensive. So, he looked into buying a rocket. That's a useful phrasal verb, to look into something. It means to investigate or get more information about it. For example, the police are looking into the cause of the accident. His search led him to Russia. He traveled there 3 times, hoping to buy a refurbished intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, to launch his greenhouse. The Russian officials, however, were deeply skeptical. When you are skeptical, you have doubts about something that other people think is true or right. For example, I am skeptical about these new diet plans. They saw this young internet millionaire talking about Mars and didn't take him seriously. They literally laughed at him. During one meeting, they offered him a rocket for a price he found far too high. Frustrated and empty-handed, he walked away. It seemed like his dream was over before it even started. But what happened on that flight home from Moscow would change the course of space exploration forever. On the plane, Musk opened his laptop and created a spreadsheet. He started to break down the problem. To break down is a phrasal verb with a few meanings, but here it means to separate something into smaller parts so it's easier to understand. For instance, let's break down this math problem into 3 simple steps. He listed all the components of a rocket: the engine, the fuel tanks, the electronics. Then, he researched the cost of the raw materials for each part. What he discovered was shocking. The cost of the actual materials to build a rocket was only about 2% of the typical sale price. Just 2%. This was the turning point. A turning point is a time when a very important change happens in a situation. For example, getting that job was a turning point in my life. He realized the problem wasn't physics, it was economics. The established aerospace companies were slow and inefficient. He thought, what if he could build the rocket himself? What if he could apply the fast, efficient principles of the software industry to manufacturing? It was an idea that seemed almost impossible, but the numbers on his spreadsheet told him it might just be feasible. Feasibles is a great word. It means possible to do easily or conveniently. For example, it is not feasible to finish this project by tomorrow. But there was one major obstacle. He knew physics, but he wasn't a rocket scientist. He needed to learn everything, and fast. So, what did he do? He decided to dive into the subject himself. This phrasal verb, to dive into, means to start doing something with a lot of enthusiasm. For example, he dove into his new hobby with great excitement. Musk got his hands on every rocket science textbook he could find. He literally borrowed books from friends in the aerospace industry. He read Rocket Propulsion Elements, Fundamentals of Astrodynamics, and Aerothermodynamics of Gas Turbine and Rocket Propulsion, among others. These are not easy books. They are dense, academic texts filled with complex equations. It must have been a daunting task. Daunting describes something that makes you feel slightly frightened or worried about your ability to achieve it. For example, climbing that mountain is a daunting challenge. He spent countless hours reading, studying, and absorbing the fundamental principles of rocketry. He wasn't just memorizing facts, he was trying to understand the core physics from the ground up. This method of learning is something he calls reasoning from first principles. It means you boil things down to their most fundamental truths and reason up from there. Fundamental means forming the basic character of something. For instance, learning the alphabet is fundamental to reading. So, instead of accepting that rockets are expensive, he asked, what are they made of, and what is the market price of those materials? This thinking allowed him to see a path that no one else did. But reading books was only half the battle. This wasn't just theory, it was a real-world engineering challenge. He knew he couldn't build a rocket alone. He needed to set up a team of the best engineers in the world. The phrasal verb to set up means to start something, like a business or an organization. For example, they set up a new company to sell software. In 2002, using $100 million of his own money from the PayPal sale, he founded Space Exploration Technologies, or SpaceX. His goal was clear and incredibly bold: to revolutionize space technology and enable people to live on other planets. It was, without a doubt, a long shot. A long shot is an idiom that means something is very unlikely to succeed, but is worth trying. For instance, winning the lottery is a long shot, but people still buy tickets. To build his team, Musk sought out brilliant, passionate engineers. One of the first and most important hires was Tom Mueller, a renowned rocket engine designer. When Musk interviewed people, he didn't ask typical questions. He would ask very specific, very difficult technical problems. He did this to see if they truly understood the material at a deep level. His own intense self-study allowed him to have these incredibly detailed conversations and to know who was genuinely an expert. The early days of SpaceX were extremely difficult. They were trying to do something that huge, government-funded organizations had struggled with for decades. They decided to build everything from scratch. That's another great idiom, from scratch. It means to start from the very beginning without using anything that already exists. For example, she baked the cake from scratch using her own recipe. This approach allowed them to control costs and innovate quickly. But it also meant there was no room for error. The team worked with relentless dedication. The word relentless means continuing in a severe or extreme way. For example, the team worked with relentless focus to meet the deadline. They built their first rocket, the Falcon 1. In 2006, they were ready for their first launch. It lifted off the ground and then immediately failed, exploding just seconds into the flight. The second launch in 2007 also failed. The third launch in 2008 failed again, this time destroying several satellites with it, including ashes of the actor James Doohan, who played Scotty in Star Trek. It was a disaster. The company was on the verge of collapse. They were quickly running out of money. To run out of something is a phrasal verb meaning to use all of something so that there is none left. For example, we ran out of milk, so I need to go to the store. Musk had invested all of his own money. He had to bite the bullet and push forward. The expression to bite the bullets means to force yourself to do something unpleasant or difficult. For example, I have to bite the bullet and finish my homework tonight. They had enough parts and just enough money for one more try. The fourth launch of the Falcon 1 was their last chance. Everything was riding on it. If it failed, SpaceX would be finished. On September 28, 2008, the Falcon 1 rocket lifted off from a remote island in the Pacific Ocean. Everyone watched, holding their breath. The rocket ascended. The first stage separated perfectly, and the second stage engine ignited. It continued climbing, higher and higher. Then, after a few tense minutes, the confirmation came. The Falcon 1 had successfully reached orbit. They had done it. Against all odds. Against all odds is an expression that means something happens even though it seemed impossible or very unlikely. For example, against all odds, the small team won the championship. This single success was crucial. Something that is crucial is extremely important or necessary. For example, it is crucial that you arrive on time for the exam. That successful launch proved their technology worked. Just a few months later, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. That contract saved the company and set it on the path to becoming the aerospace giant it is today. Elon Musk didn't go to a university to learn rocket science. He taught himself from books, from first principles, and by surrounding himself with people smarter than he was. He proved that with intense curiosity and an unstoppable will to learn, you can take on even the most complex challenges imaginable. To take on is a phrasal verb that means to accept a particular job or responsibility. For example, she will take on the new project starting next week. It's a powerful reminder that the limits of what we can achieve are often the ones we place on ourselves. This story really shows the power of deep, focused learning. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you want to keep exploring fascinating topics like this while improving your English, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Our channel is all about discovering real stories, science, and success to help you master the language in a fun and engaging way. I hope to see you in the next episode.